Everyone, welcome. So here's something we're going to talk about today. Something that almost every company says on its values page. They value employee voice. They want to know about feedback. Every idea is a good idea, apparently. No idea is bad as such. But what happens? Someone actually puts out an opinion others don't agree with. They're labeled difficult. They're talked about rooms they're not even present in. That is something we're going to talk about today. It's be interesting to know about your experiences if someone has been labeled difficult just for flagging risks or anything, be it in a group setting, workplace, internship. Just feel free open.
So I can pitch in. So I had a mixed experience with this. So during my field assignment in Gujarat, my manager regularly asked me to accompany him late into the night. And this became a routine. And I used to come back at 1 to 2 a.m. every day. So this became a problem for me. I decided to raise this issue with the senior management. And to take things lightly, I raised it in a very light manner and not sound very confrontational. So I said that whenever I accompany my manager, I come back the next day. People laughed at this situation, but the underlying issue was not really addressed, and rather it became a running joke about my manager's working style. This experience has taught me one thing, that speaking up only matters when you know that your voice is being heard and it will lead to a positive change. But when you realize that you're saying something and nobody is trying to listen or understand you, you gradually get disconnected and become hesitant to raise the voice next time. So for me, psychological safety is not about being allowed to speak, but actually knowing that there's someone who will listen to me. So yes. So does any one of you has any alternative experiences?
Right. So, first of all, I am sorry that you had such an experience. And
Okay.
I believe that the point you brought up was a very important one, the one about psychological safety. So, when I really think about it, that's what it all boils down to. It's basically whether you believe if you'll get humiliated when you say the wrong things. Now, I believe that not so long ago, Google actually did an intensive internal research on this to find out what makes a best team perform excellently in all of their job. And among all the parameters that they looked through, it was again psychological safety that emerged out as the single most important one. Now, I have actually seen this personally myself in one of my internships at Grand Fountain. My manager and I, we used to have client workshops. In these client workshops, he used to do something very specific. He would bring out his deliverables, his ideas, and then he would ask, okay, so what am I missing? Now, this was a nudge to have me start engaging, to voice out my opinions. In one such workshops, I had pointed out some gaps in the assumptions for the deliverables. Now, here, he actually treated it as a valuable input and did not push back against it. He did not just shut me up. Now, this one habit of his, it completely changed the way it changed how I spoke up for the rest of this engagement. And I do also realize that not everyone has the similar experience. So, is there anyone who actually who has personally seen or felt the negative consequences for speaking up?
Yes.
Yeah, so I can pitch in here as well. And we've seen all of this in the news, right? We saw the entire Boeing incident where a whistleblower testified in Congress about the problems at Boeing. And even his personal experience was when he spoke up at work, he got sidelined and he was punished for speaking up.
Yeah, I think Boeing got a lot of flag because of that. It was very
Yeah.
bad press in the news.
And like personally, even with my own company, Wells Fargo, back in 2016, we had people speaking on the ethics helpline being like, we are opening accounts without consent and this is a problem. But this was ignored. And what I've seen more recently is that managers are more receptive to feedback, kind of the way Darshan had a positive experience. And given the entire ethics helpline is respected and taken as a sacred part of the institution. And that's really got me thinking, is this entire problem about being punished for speaking up a thing in the past that's been just generationally passed down as a problem? Or is this something that still exists in the modern workplace and needs discussions on it?
So honestly, I think it's both, and it's messier than you would expect. So I'll just take a couple of examples. So first, I'll take a legacy example of Meta. So the CTO of Meta had actually asked his employees about how satisfied they are with the workplace and how do they like working at Meta. And the people who didn't show enough satisfaction, he just asked them to leave. And so also, if you look at a modern day example, so there's this company called Yes Madam, which is a professional services company. So they actually put out a anonymous survey amongst their employees. And the people who actually said that they were stressed about their workplace and things like that, they were fired immediately.
This was very unfortunate.
I mean, we see this going on everywhere. But I have a specific question on this, and I'd like to direct this to Gautam. Given your articleship experience and your on ground audit experience, have you come up with any ways in order to cope up with this?
So yeah, I have some experience. So to cope up with this, the easier way could be that when a senior person asks for inputs before making decisions. So this changes the way how safe employees feel to raise their concerns and opinions. Also, this works best when a leader comes from the front and leads from the front and says that, correct me when I'm wrong and, let me know if there are some changes to be done. So this makes employee feel safer and, he can raise his opinions and concerns. Apart from that, we have some examples like Bridgewater. So their dissent is a part of their system only. Disagreement is not an exception there. It's expected from the employees. So they have built systems in that manner. A lot is not required for this. Even small changes like, a quick surveys or impulse checks, or let's say pre-mortem before a decision is made. So that can help the employees to, chip in with their solutions and inputs.
Yeah.
But I feel that there might be some consequences when employees speak up or not speak up. So if you would like to discuss something on that.
Yeah. I think we lose more than we have realized. So there's this phenomena, it's called groupthink. And what actually happens is it's a tight knit group and which makes itself believe under pressure that whatever it is doing, it's right. They stop weighing alternatives and they start treating disagreement as a sort of rebellion or like a disloyalty. And one of the textbook examples of this was the NASA Challenger disaster that happened. So a lot of engineers raised the concerns prior to the launch that things are not going right, but they weren't able to make it up the chain and at the end, we lost more than 6 lives of astronauts. So that was a very sad incident that happened. And I think there's another thing, it's called the Abelian paradox. So, what that is that literally the whole group ends up doing something that nobody wants to do individually. And that is because everyone assumed that because no one spoke up, so everybody's agreed to it. And that is the problem, the breaking silence thing. And that is something we see in every day because speaking up first, it is not contractually mandated. And it no everybody feels like it's not my problem. So it is the first thing that people stop doing whenever we are working in any sort of team environment. And so we don't just lose out on the big stuff because of not speaking up. We lose out on the small early warning signs that could have stopped a lot of these things from happening, which actually brings me to a point that has bugged, I think, a lot of us that why does speaking up in the moment get you a thank you or like a sort of appreciation, but it later shows up in like your appraisal report or in like through the grapevine that you are sort of a rebellious person. So if anybody of you would like to chime in on that.
That's actually a really good explanation, Akshita. I think in the moment, thanks for a feedback costs the manager nothing. It's quick, it's expected, it ends the conversation. But the real difference shows up during the appraisal time months later. And this is when the memory bias, self-serving bias, or the feeling that the manager was put in spot, he was challenged by his team sticks with him. And it is when, the feeling that the employee feels like he didn't deserve what he got, right? The outcome that he deserved. The trade off actually shows up during the appraisal time. So, what do we think about this?
So where does this leave us? The paradox we started out with isn't something organizations haven't noticed. It's one it's one most haven't had to actually confront. Because voice looks free in the moment, but costs later, quietly, in a rating or a promotion list. Whether it's a Boeing engineer testifying in front of the Senate or a viral post about a company doing mass firing, the pattern's the same. Asking for voice is easy. Actually sitting with it is difficult. Closing that gap isn't about better posters or suggestion boxes. It's leaders modeling dissent publicly, separating how someone made you feel from whether they were right, and building small habits. Asking before deciding, running pre-mortems, that make speaking up survivable after the meeting ends. Until that happens deliberately, voice stays something companies ask for in principle and quietly punish in practice.
Fair
Thanks for
enough.
listening.
Yeah, that's really fair.
This has been such a good discussion. Thanks to all of you for coming out and sharing such good experiences, specifically with respect to how voices have been penalized, how it's it's different as in having an opinion and then putting it out and then facing the backlash for that. That is actually something we as a group wanted to discuss in this podcast. And I think it's been delivered fairly well with respect to personal examples like Wells Fargo or any other things about your Gujarat internship experience. I think we've had a pretty much good discussion.
Yeah, it is very
Yeah, it was very
It was
interesting.
really
Thank you so much for
Thank
the
you.
wonderful questions.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.